So a lot of times when we make a simple rail fence block, our rails end up being narrower than they are long. And when you turn your block, it does not fit with the other one. So I've simplified that by merely cutting a square and layering a strip over the center. And I've used either Modus pre-cut jelly roll strip, or you can pink the edges yourself and use from your stash. And you end up with this little project. This is a 1.5 inch strip, or you can use the 2.5 inch strips on a larger block. Because your background squares are all cut exactly the same size, you're just sewing squares together in rows. Perfect rail fence. We're top stitching 1/8 of an inch away from the inside of the pinked edge. And I just use my same stitch length that I would use for piecing, because we're basically piecing on top. One of the simplest blocks to convert to layered patchwork is a snowball, where normally you would use a square for the connecting corner method, and you would draw your line diagonally and stitch on the line and press towards the corner. But sometimes our corners don't always line up perfectly with our background square by the time we do that. So in my method, we cut the square in half, just glue it on the corner, do again the 1/8 inch top stitching from the bias edge, and because the edge is cut on the bias, it will not unravel. Super simple, no flipping, no positioning, repositioning. You always have a perfect corner on your snowball block. So for our block we call Spinning Stars, it has 4 units that are all exactly the same, that we create by cutting a jelly roll strip into a rectangle and cutting it diagonally to make a long skinny triangle. We then position it on one corner of our background square, and I like sew-line glue. Just do a couple of spots of glue to hold it in place, and then top stitch 1/8 of an inch from the edge. Then we do a smaller little triangle on top, and we would top stitch that as well. Here's about the only time I ever do trim, is when there are 3 layers. So I would trim out my center layer. I always want to keep the background layer, because we know when we're stitching then we have a square stable background. And then we add a triangle on the opposite corner. And if you make 4 of those exactly alike and just rotate them to make the block, you have a spinning star block. And the miniature version that is in the book uses just the little triangles. So I think I used a mini charm pack for this one. So we have 2 blocks, 2 strips, red and blue. And we're just going to position a triangle on opposite corners, a couple of little dabs of glue, and stitch. And the same thing here. So we'll make 4 of exactly the same unit that have the top stitching 1/8 of an inch from the bias edge. Much less bulk than the flip and sew, where you would actually have a seam allowance plus the triangle to the corner. So much less bulk here where they meet, and you get a much crisper intersection. And then you make 4 of these that match, and again rotate them 90 degrees, and we get our pinwheel.
Thanks for the demo.
That then looks like the little quilt here, and we have a larger version in the book as well. Kaleidoscope quilt is simple 4 patches stitched together in rows. And then as you're going to quilt, we position our diamond template on top and stitch, and it creates this totally different block. Looks very difficult and is super easy to do. So here is the mini Kaleidoscope. There's a larger scrappy version in the book as well. And we use our diamond template that fits on a honey bun, or it can be cut from yardage as well. So to create the illusion of curved piecing, we have created a melon template. So we have our background square. We position little squares in the corner that have been cut on the bias so that the edges won't unravel. And then we position our melon in between. And you can top stitch 1/8 of an inch from the edge continuously from the square, clear across the melon, and then back across again. And that also helps hold the little points of the melon. And you can create either a pillow top from a single block, or the whole lap quilt is also included in the book.